warm welcome to Optimising the Social Brain to Build Engagement. My name's Carly Phillips. I'm joined today by the lovely Charlotte Jameson. We're going to co-host this session for you today. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from wherever you are dialing in from today. I'm dialing in from the land of the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present. We also acknowledge anyone on the call with lived experience or caring for those with mental ill health. And Charlotte has already mentioned how nice and safe it is when we have our cameras on and we can increase trust with each other. So if you'd like to leave your cameras on, you're welcome to do so. If you've never joined us before, an extra special warm welcome to you. I'm Carly Phillips. I'm a wellbeing keynote speaker, a wellbeing researcher, mental health first aider, and nutritionist. Good morning, Charlotte. Would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Hello, everyone. I'm Charlotte Jameson. I am a wellbeing and culture specialist. And so my background's been very much in the performance side of psychology, so not so much the clinical side. I've got a sporting background, so I've always been interested in great performance and making it even better. So work a lot with organizational development and culture change. And yeah, very much looking forward to sharing what I've been learning about and diving right into lately.
Thank you, Charlotte. And I'd like to welcome Aileen Senior to the call from Nestle. Aileen has very generously offered to present a case study to us today, which we're very excited about. So very shortly, we will be hearing from Aileen and her experience in the workplace of really how to improve connection and culture within her team of people. So we're going to kick off today. I'm going to hand over to Charlotte. While Charlotte is presenting this event for you today, all the way through, it's perfectly okay to ask questions and to make comments. So use the chat box and I will keep my eye on that. And I'll hand over to Charlotte.
Thank you very much. Yes, we're definitely going to be using that chat box. I like interaction. I like to hear from you and your thoughts on things. So we are going to be talking about engagement because when employees are engaged, they're more likely to stay with an organization. They're more likely to contribute to a positive work environment. They're more satisfied with their job. They tend to work more collaboratively, and you'll see how it positively impacts productivity, creativity, innovation, problem solving in your organization. So it really it sounds like a win-win. So not only do engaged workers make it more meaningful and enjoyable for everyone, but it's undeniably good for the bottom line and long-term sustainability of your organization as well. So in this time together, we are going to briefly discuss this idea of connection when it comes to increasing engagement. We're going to have, as Carly suggested, a wonderful case study by Nestle. And we're going to spend just a tiny bit of time to appreciate, well, where are we at the moment? What's the global work landscape like? And then I will introduce you to Project Reconnect, the Art of Communication model, which is an event that we hold at the Corporate Wellbeing Hub. So let's get started. How do we increase engagement? How do we build it? Well, one of the key factors for influence engagement is the quality of connections among team members. Now, we're not talking about BFFs for life, okay? A lot of people sometimes tend to say, well, I don't need to be best friends with my workplace buddies. And I agree, you don't necessarily need to, but you do need to have a level of respect and trust. So connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. So when it's not toxic, right? Relationships can get under your skin. And it can be really, really great when you're in a positive relationship, and it can be really harmful when you're in a negative, harmful relationship. Now, our brain is wired for this kind of positive connection. We have this natural pull towards teamwork and collaboration. That's the social brain coming into play here. But we need this sense of trust for it to actually work. So building trust is this critical aspect of positive connections. It has a direct impact on our sense of safety. So we spoke about psychological safety before, and that's our nervous system at play. They call it neuroception. We've kind of got this surveillance system, unbeknownst to us, working all the time. Is that person safe? Is that person trustworthy? Or is that person going to, is that going to pose a threat to myself? We're doing that all the time. And it has a direct impact on the way that we interact with other people. Now, I won't go too far into this story, but as I mentioned, I've been in culture, industry of culture change for almost 20 years. And rather ironically, some of the most interesting experiences come from the culture teams or the people working in this sort of space. And I do remember one time we were asked, I was in a facilitation job where we would go traveling, and we were asked by the leaders to basically report back on each other. So we'd go out on our little field trips, and then we'd come back and we'd have to report back. We'd have to report back on our performance, our professionalism, all of the above. And that had a direct impact on our level of engagement, because we started not to trust each other. It was like, oh, what, did I do something wrong, or did I falter, or did I make a mistake, or, what are you going to tell management? What are you going to tell the leaders? And it was sort of, you didn't have this comfort and this ability to be your whole self. You had to sort of, it was very much a threat response. And so you can imagine what happened to our level of engagement. And of course, some really fantastic facilitators left because that was not the environment for them anymore. So it can have a really catastrophic effect if we don't get the culture of engagement right. So in Project Reconnect, the event that we host here at Corporate Wellbeing Hub, we really talk about how do you increase this level of engagement through the neurobiology of connection. So we talk about the art of communication model. And that really starts with this idea of building positive connections. Really starts with yourself and your level of self-awareness, and how your nervous system, how you're reacting actually affects and impacts other people. And then also, what do other people need in that moment? How can you work with them so that they are feeling in that approach response rather than that threat response? We also see in building positive connections that effective communication is vital. Now, it's not just speaking and listening, it's actually a neurobiological dance where we feed off each other's nervous systems. So the nervous system actually influences how we connect and how we respond to each other. And we need to make it a habit out of nurturing these positive connections with our workplaces. It's going to have a contagious effect on the level of engagement for all. And it's like a muscle. It needs to be worked. It needs to be nurtured. It's called creating social fitness through habit. So just like we create fitness with our muscles, we can create social fitness as well. So on that idea of creating social fitness and tiny behaviors and creating habits, I thought it would be a really nice place for our wonderful speaker, Aileen, to come in and talk about what she's been doing. So Carly, would you like to I'll hand over to you and you can introduce Aileen.
Thank you, Charlotte. Welcome, Aileen. I ask you to pop your camera on, take yourself off mute. I've got you up on the screen. You are. Lovely to see you. I'd like to introduce Aileen Senior to our event today. Aileen is a manager at Nestle at a site here in Melbourne. And we have been working with all of the Nestle sites to do workplace wellbeing assessments so that they can explore, get all their employee wellbeing data, and then together we make an action plan on how to put a wellbeing program together. And in our first meeting, Aileen and I had a chat about people and culture, and Aileen shared with me this incredible example. So I've invited Aileen to come and share this today because it's a great example of connection and culture. Hello, Aileen. I'm going to hand over to you now to share your story.
Hi, Carly. Thank you. Thank you for having me today. It's really interesting because I didn't think this was really that big a deal when we first implemented it at Mulgrave, but the more I share about it, the more I understand the impact that we've had on our team. So I started here as a manager about 18 months ago, and we really needed to make a very significant cultural shift. The vibe at the workplace just wasn't quite right. People were really struggling. They were quite unhappy. So what we did is we had some just really organic discussions amongst the team about what they would really like to see in the workplace. And we have about 22 people on the site that we have here, and we have about 14 nationalities represented. And so one of the common themes that came through was that people really shared an interest in food and cooking for each other. So the suggestion came about that we would start to cook for each other and share a meal together once a week. So it was very much a team-driven initiative of which I was able to support and essentially give permission for the team to go forth with this plan or this activity. So what we decided as a group that we would cook a pot of soup each week to share amongst the group. And this was last winter, so this was going back into probably June, July of last year. The reason that we chose a pot of soup was it was relatively inexpensive for the colleagues to cook for each other. We also decided vegetarian because it would keep costs down, and it would also be inclusive of some vegetarian members of the team that we have, and that it was quite easy to transport to and from work. So basically from that discussion, Soup Club commenced. So if you wouldn't mind just flicking to the next slide. Thank you. So this is just a bit of a picture series of all of the soups that were cooked. So basically it took 14 weeks to rotate through the team. So we had a lot of people that, not a lot of people opted in, but there was a few that chose not to participate. So it was a completely voluntary experience. And essentially, yeah, once a week, the cook or the chef for that week would nominate the day that they would bring their pot of soup to share. So you can see here the visual representation of all of the foods that we had. So we had a soup that came from Russia. We had tom yum coming from Thailand. We had like a protein soup coming from one of our Indian chefs. So very much a variety. And what we saw was that people, when they brought their pot of soup to share, there was so much pride. So there was very much the telling of the story about how that soup originated. There was recipe sharing. There was discussions about my mum used to make me this soup to make me feel better. So I've brought it to the team today to share. So it very much transformed our workplace. All of a sudden, every week, everyone, all they wanted to talk about was Soup Club. What's everyone cooking this week? What do we got to look forward to? What day is the soup coming in? And it also brought everyone together to kind of prep the meal. So we would bring in like a slow cooker and heat the soup in the morning. And then there was also some team building on, you know, dishing the soup out, buttering bread, those kinds of things. So when we put this together, everyone was so impressed. They're like, oh my gosh, look at all the soups that we've cooked for everybody. So at the completion of Soup Club, the team loved it that much that it has evolved. So the following, after we finished Soup Club, we decided to do, I'll go through these benefits and then I'll talk about what we did next. So it brings the team together once per week. It had a significant impact on our culture and QAC Mulgrave. So everyone, if I said to everybody, what do you like most about working for Mulgrave at the lab here? They say Soup Club. It strengthens the relationships with each other. It's budget friendly. So it actually has no negative impact on the Nestle budget. So it's all the contribution is from the member of the team. So everyone loved it that much that it evolved into Bowl Club. So the next iteration of Soup Club was that you had to prepare a meal that fitted in a bowl. So it was a salad or a noodle dish or a rice dish or a curry. So we saw all sorts of different things in that space, and that kind of happened across summer. So it was a bit more summer friendly. And then at the moment, so again, everyone loved it again so much that we've continued it. We're doing morning tea club. So last week we had, again, one of our Indian nationality staff member cooked an Indian morning tea for us, which included iced coffee and all sorts of sweet and savoury treats. So I'm not sure what's on the menu for this week, but I'm sure it will be delicious. Yeah, so that's essentially what we've done. So I just asked 2 of our team members to put together some words on what the Soup Club, which we have coined it, but it has evolved, what it means to them. So Wab or Wathira from our team said, the club days are fun, exciting days. It's a time to celebrate skills, culture, and the diversity of each other. There's also the excited chatter about spouses or mothers, or whoever has helped prepare the meal. It's a time to encourage each other. So not all of us are master chefs. Taking part is not compulsory, and there's always so much food that no one is excluded. And it's also a time for those with photography skills to have fun. So there's lots of recordings and videos of the day. So Andrew, who's one of our team leaders, he's put together. So the impact on morale for the team has been great. Sharing meals makes sure that everyone has a break together to socialise in general, but the shared meals are also a great conversation starter for everyone involved. We all get to try something new and different each week, and the shared experience brings everyone together. On top of that, the cards. So we also have some School of Life cards that we bring out on occasion, which has like a question that we ask the group, and everyone will share it. So an example of one of those questions is, what was your first job? So the team will go around the room and share what their first job was. And it just, again, creates a culture of connection and sharing history and getting to understand your colleagues a bit more. So sometimes we do the cards. So they also provide great icebreakers and stories to share. I think it has made everyone involved more familiar and approachable across the teams and improved the willingness of analysts to assist one another in the lab. It also provides something extra to look forward to during the week and something to discuss in general. So in summation, what was very much an organic wellbeing initiative has become a key driver of change here at the lab. So we have seen significant increases in performance, KPIs, morale, and also connectedness. And that in turn is helping the business objectives of on-time release, KPIs, financial, leading financial change. So for me, I'm a huge advocate. I've always been a promoter of, if you have a happy, healthy workplace, you will see the business metrics continue to improve. So that's the sharing of our little story here at the lab. And if you have any questions or want more information, just feel free to reach out.
Aileen, that's incredible. My heart is like melting over this side about the story and what you say is a little thing. You can see from your employees how huge the impact has been on culture, on inclusion, on wellbeing, on so many fronts. So I just love, love, love that. Thank you for sharing. Can I ask everyone else on the call? Aileen's going to stay on for another 5 minutes. So please, this is a fantastic time to jump into the chat. If you want to make a comment, if you want to ask a question, this is a really good time to do that. Great example of when you are building your wellbeing strategy. Yes, of course, there is a place for the top-down formal stuff, the education, the training, the strategy, the policies, all of that stuff. But don't forget to bring in this ground-up approach, this peer-to-peer support, these free things you can do that you can see make such a huge impact to your people. Thank you, Heather. Heather says she loves this. Thank you for sharing, Aileen. That is wonderful. If there's no questions for Aileen, I just want to say a really big thank you. Thanks for joining us and thanks for sharing today, Aileen.
No problems. It was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte. I'll hand back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. That's everything that I speak about happening in real life before your eyes. So it's really cool to see how you got buy-in from everyone. You know, it was sort of like, who have we got in the room? Let's use our strengths. Let's lean into what we have already. The different nationalities, people have an interest in food. And then this idea of giving and taking. So for those of you who have heard of Adam Grant, the giant in organizational psychology, I was lucky enough to see him last week, and he spoke about this idea of building cultures of givers and not takers. And what I heard clearly was this idea of people giving and receiving as well, because quite often givers find it hard to receive. And so what you've given them this opportunity to really give to others, and then for people to sit back and receive a beautiful meal as well. And he says to build a culture of givers and to build, you know, this positive culture is about he talks about it in terms of the reciprocity ring, and it's where even takers have this chance and ability to give to each other. So an amazing initiative to implement. It's really, really brilliant. So let's talk a little bit more about, what was really going on in this case study in terms of, we had this tiny behavior, we had this habit that fed the structure of these connections. But in it, we heard Aileen talk about this idea of people responding to each other in a positive way. Okay, they were responding in a way that actually was respectful and was inclusive. So everybody got a bit of a meal, and also this idea of, awareness and attuning to each other. And just by creating that space for people to come and sit and talk was actually tending to people's nervous systems, right? And so when they go back into their work, into the lab, the way that they will interact with each other, and it was even spoken in what Aileen said, the way that their interactions were actually more positive and more helpful. And that's because people were attuning to other people just simply by having that chance for their nervous systems to regulate and come back to this safe place when they were sharing a meal together. So much in that. It's really, really exciting to hear. Now, I wanted to steer this conversation to just appreciate what is really happening from a global perspective in the work landscape, because we are having in a lot of places, in most places now, we have this hybrid approach, and typically it's 3 days in the office, 2 days out of the office. That's what we're seeing more likely. And Adam Grant himself last week was just saying, look, hybrid is the present and it is the future. And so how do we create this environment of engagement in this hybrid world? And I think it's always useful to start with, okay, well, where are we at the moment? So this is where I'd like you to have a bit of reflection and to share your reflection with us on a global basis. Do you think there are more people, A, thriving at work, B, quiet quitting, or C, loud quitting? This is on a global workplace basis. So in the comment box, I'd really love to see what you think might be the where most people are at. So we've got a B, we've got a B, we've got a B, we've got a B. Have we got a general theme of B? I think we've got a general theme of B. Well, maybe you've read the Gallup State of Global Workplace report, because it certainly is this, or maybe you see it in your own workplaces. So there are people who are in this quiet quitting realm. And so these employees are filling a seat and watching the clock. They put in the minimum effort required, and they are psychologically disconnected from their employer. Although they are minimally productive, they are more likely to be stressed and burnt out than engaged workers because they feel a bit lost and disconnected from their workplace. Now, in saying that, the caveat is there are some people who do want to just go to work and turn up and leave, and that works for them. But what we're doing is comparing this to an engaged employee and what happens to the culture and to productivity and collaboration when there is engagement. And so engagement is thriving at work, where these employees find their work meaningful, they feel connected to the team and their organization, rather like what we heard from Nestle. They feel proud about the work they do, they take ownership on performance, and they're going in the extra mile for teammates and customers. And then, of course, there's loud quitting. So these are the people who will take actions directly to harm an organization, or undercutting its goals, or opposing its leaders. At some point along the way, the trust between employee and employer is severely broken, or the employee has been woefully mismatched to a role, maybe causing constant crisis. So yeah, obviously not a whole lot of people there, which is good, but it can have a catastrophic effect if you have a loud quitter, this idea of a taker in the culture. Actually, the statistics that came out last week that I heard from Adam Grant was a taker, a toxic person in a culture can double or triple the negative impact than having, one giver or one positive person in the culture. So it's being actively disengaged is a real threat to the organisation. Low engagement costs It costs 8.8 trillion. And the manager is actually the linchpin of engagement. So 70% of team engagement is actually attributed to the manager. But what we're finding is that most managers are actually quiet quitting too. They're waiting for the tools to build greater teams. They're not quite, there yet. They've kind of, maybe some have been promoted to manager level simply because they were good at their job, but then, leading people is a little bit different. But we can do something about quiet quitting. We can set up meaningful check-ins and conversations between leaders and their teams. We can build, mutual trust and develop and nurture these kind of positive connections. So there is a need. There's a need to establish these connections. And leaders need to build intentional connections amongst employees across geographic generational boundaries. So, we're definitely finding there's a lot of generational boundaries that leaders have to navigate. And of course, this idea of hybrid working and online working. One thing we need to keep in mind is this idea of the fact that we are social beings, we have social brains, and we need to prioritize our social relationships like our life depends on it. And that's at work as well. So I wondered if you might reflect again in the comment box. Do you see relationships at work as important? Do you prioritize them? And I'd really open this out and ask, do you sort of see them? Do you prioritize them? Comment in the comment box if you agree, if you do prioritize them, or maybe you're just. I do hear a lot of people, especially as I'm a working parent myself. I've got a few working parent friends, and a lot of the sentiment is, I'm just surviving. I don't have time to do all that because I'm just surviving in life. Like, don't put that on me as well. Which is a really understandable thing. So yeah, as much as impact on our life as personal ones, it does. We spend a lot of time, Ellie, in our workplace. They're a key part of my role in my life. Absolutely. Social connection and relationships, what makes or breaks. Yes, I absolutely agree, Crystal. Prioritize them, but not over family and friends, but don't distinguish between home and work. Yeah, thank you, Bobby Lee. Absolutely. We do find that this idea of work-family conflict and family-work conflict, if you do have to look at both because they impact each other. So really, really wonderful to hear your thoughts there. And it doesn't sound like we need it, but we've got research. It's grounded in study to really share that this stuff matters. I don't know if you've heard about the gigantic study that has spanned about 80 plus years over in America. It originated in the 30s, in the late 30s, to identify predictors of health amongst a Harvard cohort. So this was basically just men, because women really didn't go to university back then. And originally they got all different types of men from all different socioeconomic, and they started studying their lives with this idea of looking at who ended up being the healthiest, more vibrant, and who lived the longest. And then this study expanded to not only the men, but then to their spouses and to their offspring, and generationally they have followed them for 80 plus years. And what they have found in their studies is that our relationships and how happy we are in our relationships has a powerful influence on our health. In fact, taking care of your body is important, absolutely, but tending to your relationships is a form of self-care too. So that's the revelation that relationships matter for your longevity. So it was the people who had the most nurturing relationships were the ones who actually lived the longest. So it's good for our health, but it's also good for our job satisfaction, our creativity, competence, performance. And can really help buffer. It's a protective factor, they call it. It buffers against work stress and workplace burnout. If you've got some teammates that you trust and that you are in it together, it can really help buffer that kind of workplace stress. So supportive and inclusive relationships at work are associated with all these factors. So it's worthwhile thinking about how we can build that. And that's through the idea of this art of connection model. So really looking at this idea of awareness, response, and the tiny behaviors. So awareness, now we're not going to go obviously into this in the event that we run with Corporate Wellbeing Hub. We definitely have a deep dive into this. How do we build this self-awareness? How do we have an appreciation of our nervous system, and whether it's in regulation or whether it's in hyper arousal, so that fight or flight, or whether it's in hypo arousal, so that kind of burnout stage, that depressive withdrawing kind of stage. And we need to connect with ourselves and work out where we're at from a nervous system point of view before we even think about connecting with other people. Okay, we need to know where we're at. I don't know if you have young children, but the most effective way to help them come down from a temper tantrum or from, you know, some really high states of their nervous system is for you to be regulated yourself, is for you to be calm and coming in. You know, it's all about connect first and then you know, redirect and go further. So that's what that's all about, is this idea of feeling connected and regulated so that you can have a positive impact on each other. We have emotional contagion. Our energy is catching towards other people. So 40% of our stress will be caught by immediate people in our circle. 40%. And I don't know if you've ever seen that effect play out. I certainly saw that in you know, during the lockdowns. I would, you know, my husband was around and he'd come down from you know, having his stressful work day, and I'd have everything kind of chilled, even though I was, you know, working and trying to homeschool as well. We'd have a bit of a calm moment, and then if he came down stressed, immediately it would just, everyone would just feed off that, and we'd all get a bit stressy. So I used to ask him to just, you know, go walk up and down the stairs or take a little walk around the block or something, just to you regulate so that you can come back and have this this idea of co-regulation. So your energy is catching, and it's really important to know where you're at. And it's really important to intelligently look at how you can actually regulate your nervous system. A lot of people sort of say, oh, just, you know, go and meditate for 10 minutes, or just go and, you know, be a yogi on a rock or something. And it doesn't work like that for everybody. So you've got to know where you're at. Are you in hyper arousal? And that will need something that calms you, that to get back into your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest system. So that will entail things like slow breathing, okay, where your exhalation is longer than your inhalation. That will get you grounded again. But it might be that you need actually to do a quick sort of sprint, or, you know, some squats to kind of get that energy out, and then do your slow breathing. So you need to intelligently apply it to your own nervous system. There's no sort of quick fix. It's you saying, what do I need? What do I need right now? So, you know, we can all do this together. We can take one breath in and then a long breath out. And just by doing that, you can feel that sense of groundedness. There are many different breathing techniques. One of my favorites is called the physiological sigh. And I learned this from Dr. Andrew Huberman. And he talks about this idea of, he also calls it cyclic breathing. So you breathe in halfway, and then you breathe in again, and then you sigh it out, right? And you see that when kids, naturally, when they're sort of crying, or when you're in a state of crying, our bodies naturally go, and we sort of go, and then we go like that. And it's a natural thing. So if you can tap into that, that will really help regulate your nervous system. And you can do it for, you know, a couple of minutes, 5 minutes, and it'll really make a huge difference to your, you know, your stress energy. But it might be that you're feeling really flat. All right. It might be that you've been in stress response for so long that in fact you've fallen into hypoarousal. You've fallen into this idea of a freeze response almost, and you kind of don't have the energy to move, and you don't have the energy to even just, you know, you're here at work but the lights aren't on, you know, presenteeism kind of thing. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's just maybe your nervous system is not cooperating right now. So what you need to do is you need to have some short, sharp breaths, something that is going to activate you. So it might be breathing, it might be. And so if you do yoga, there's, you know, different sort of Kabbalah. I can never say this word, Kabbalah. If anybody's a yogi in here, please step up and tell it. But I love this technique in yoga, and we use our diaphragm. We go, and it's this activation kind of breathing, right? Which is really, really helpful to stimulate your nervous system into action again. It might be that you need face-to-face interaction. That is a really lovely way of bringing back some energy to your nervous system. It might be a gentle walk to start with. It might be some music. You know, you think of some really uplifting music. I know that I can be feeling really lethargic and down and out, and you put one of my best boogie songs on and I'm back, baby. And it's the music that gets me going, right? So you have a little think about some of the songs that really get you going. And when you're feeling flat and you need some energy, maybe that's something that can work for you. So the takeaway here is to really intelligently apply the intervention that you need to regulate your nervous system. And then you need to think about how the other person is as well. Because if you come in, you know, going, man, I feel like, thank you. Yes, that always gets me going too. Brings me back to my my early uni days, that's for sure. Yeah, you need to think about how this affects somebody else too, right? So if you come in and you're like, hey, how you doing? Woohoo! Like, let's, you know, get this party started. And somebody's just like really like just flat, or maybe they're so stressed as well, and they're like, oh, like it's, you know, it's all too much. Like I can't, this overstimulation, I can't handle, you know, you being like this as well. We need to be really cognizant of what we're bringing to the table and what the other person needs as well. So, so that we can, have these positive interactions with each other. So always asking yourself, what do I need? But also asking, you know, what do they need as well right now? And maybe they are feeling a bit flat, and maybe you can do a little bit of a walk with them, go and get a coffee, you know, let's have some interaction time. That might be what is best for them. Okay, so let's have a little bit of a chat around how do we respond in a way when we talk about response. Part of building positive connections is this idea of communication, and it's not just listening and speaking. All right, it's, as I said before, it's this neurobiological dance. It's this idea of being curious, not judgmental to someone. When you're curious, you create that safe response. It's okay to have that opinion or that thought or make that mistake. I'm wondering why you did make that mistake though. Have you missed a step? What, did I not explain it? You know, do we not have clarity around the role here? Or just being really curious. And I wonder if it might be interesting for people to start to think about, oh, I wonder what my default is. When I listen to someone, am I listening to try and win? Now, what that means is when you listen to try and win, it's like, oh, you'll be okay. Don't worry, keep going. And I did this yesterday. So my daughter had a swimming, her swimming carnival yesterday, and she came in and she's like, oh, I've got a pinched nerve, Mum. She'd done her freestyle. Oh, I've got a pinched nerve. She had some ice pack on it. And I'm, you know, as I said before, I've got a bit of a sporting background. So I'm a bit like, well, that's just sport. Just get back out there, you know. You'll be right. Here, I'll give you a bit of a massage. You're doing backstroke next, so that's fine. You'll just, you know. And I started going, you'll be right. And then I remembered this idea of listening to win versus listening to learn. And so I caught myself before I went too far down that track. And I said, oh, man, that must be really painful. It sounds like it's a pinched nerve. And I gave her some time and I was like, what do you think happened? And then I said, do you think maybe a massage might help? And, you know, here, take a Panadol as well. This idea of just giving her time and space to be injured, and know that I was sort of listening to her and not trying to change her narrative, right? Then I was able to gently say, oh, I think, you know, the backstroke will be a good idea because it'll turn it in the other direction. And, you know, how are you feeling now? Let's go. It wasn't mollycoddling her. It was just allowing her to tell me what was going on and then gently directing her back into the pool. And she ended up then doing, you know, backstroke and butterfly. So if I had just listened to Win, you know, it would have just shut her down. But how often do we do this to people? Oh, you'll be right. You know, somebody comes in and so I've got this presentation, but I'm a bit scared about presenting it. It's like, oh, you'll be right. You know, you're awesome. It's like, that's not what I needed. Just needed you to, I don't know, listen to me. Or we listen to fix. Now, this is quite common, especially among spouses. You know, we've got this problem. Oh, here's how you fix it. I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen to me. And that's what, you know, that's where that sort of comes from. This idea of, you know, don't fix it, just listen. So I just wondered, would anyone feel like sharing what maybe their default is? I think we all have a default of, you know, one or the other. So, you know, what might be your default? And it might be at work you have more of a default, and at home you have more of a default of the other one. And I think it's useful just to recognize this in ourselves, so that we can, like I did yesterday, stop ourselves in the moment and choose something a little bit more helpful when it comes to responding. So has anyone identified their defaults? Anybody share? Listen to fix. Yeah, thanks, Julie. Yep. Very common, very common. Well, this is what you need to do. Here, just do this and you'll be fine. Yeah. Thanks, Simon. Thanks for your honesty. It's absolutely true. I'm listen to fix at home and listen to learn at work. Yeah, Heather, we often wear different hats, don't we? Absolutely. Fix. Yeah. Thanks, Jay. Oh, you're the rescuer, Carly. Yes. Fantastic self-awareness. Yeah. And it's okay to be a giver. It's wonderful to be a giver. Culture thrives on givers in a way where we're giving the right things, what people need, right? So we need to listen to learn so that we can give effectively. Yeah. Practicing. Thank you, Vicky. That's wonderful. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, a way that we can practice to listen more is this idea of creating meaningful conversations in our workplaces. So creating the opportunity for these meaningful conversations to come out, these meaningful check-ins. So just one meaningful conversation per week develops high-performance relationships more than any other single leadership activity. And we heard that from Aileen today, was this, you know, soup kitchen. This opportunity to enjoy soup together created that meaningful conversation, and we heard from her what happened here. So, you know, just another reflection here. How often do you have team or leader check-ins? What's the rhythm? What's the normal rhythm for people? If you're weekly, monthly, during review time, only at exit interviews? You know, let's start to really think about, okay, when are our check-ins? Do we have check-ins? What's the rhythm? Weekly, monthly, during review time, or at exit interview? You've got some weekly ones there. Yep. Great, Elle. And if you're not ready to sort of share what you do, maybe, you know, in the past you know, what have you done and what have you seen as the result? Maybe, you know, have they been good if they've been weekly or monthly? So anything that you can share there. Do daily catch-ups with the wider team. Oh, wow, and weekly one-on-ones. Yeah, cool. Awesome. Awesome. So what you will find is that you're doing some really good things, okay? And this idea, this event is really about saying, okay, what are you doing and how can you leverage on that win? How can you make it even better and more widespread? Because, yeah, there will be some things that are really working and really making some positive ripple effects. So identify them, what's working, and how can you do more of that. And that's what you're going to be doing with your tiny behaviors. How can you make sure that you build this connection muscle, build this social fitness? Now, some people might need to start with family and friends first before they move to colleagues in the community. But micro connections are so important in this. It doesn't have to be this big, long, coffee date. It can just be, a smile and a nod in the hallway. Like it's building the muscle. So starting where you're at and building from that. So now we're going to hear from you, and we're going to do a bit of a Mentimeter poll. So in a sec, I will just give you the QR code because I'd really love to hear, going away from this event today, what are some little connection ideas that you might have? What are you inspired to do back in your workplace? I love taking things from a webinar and taking them and implementing them straight away. So we'd love to hear from you. Here's the QR code, or go into www.menti.com, type in the code there. I would really love if you could take out your smartphones and do that, because we want to hear what are some of the tiny behaviors that you're going to do with your organization. Once we hang up from here, what have you got excited about? Okay, so let's come over here and see what people are doing. We've got some check-ins, phoning my team. Yeah, so it sounds like you're in a hybrid scenario. Yep, we heard how check-ins were really helpful, the daily catch-ups and even the weekly ones. I wonder what else people... Listening more, okay. Be more curious. Morning huddles, nice. And just creating space and time to have conversations. Yeah, I think we've sort of, some of us have lost that art of conversations, and some younger ones maybe haven't necessarily ever learnt it as much as other people. Being welcoming, that's a lovely thing to put on your intention. Change your language. That can have a huge effect on whether somebody's in threat response or approach response. Just taking the time to stop and listen to someone. Love it. Arrange toolbox talks. Yeah, really helpful. Listen more. Lots of listening. Love it. Change language, social fitness. That's excellent. So they're coming in thick and fast, all these little behaviors that you're going to take away. So it's really lovely to hear from you that you've taken so much from this webinar already. The value of a smile. The value of the smile is so important. I love that you've noticed that. Yeah. And we talked about the contagion effect. Well, a smile is contagious. The ripple of kindness is contagious. Gratitude is contagious. And if we're experiencing gratitude, we cannot experience stress at the same time. So if we're sharing what we're grateful for, we're sharing, what we're thankful about someone, then that is going to decrease the amount of times people are in that stress response as well, because of that gratitude. Bring new seeing. Well, that's interesting. So bring new seeing. I wonder if somebody could help me understand that a bit more, or so maybe a new perspective on things is what I'm getting from that. But this social fitness, this idea of social fitness, yeah, and building that connection muscle, it's really important. Thank you so much for taking the time, everyone, to fill that out. And if you haven't quite yet, I really encourage you to think about that and taking that away back to your workplace and implementing them. And who knows, maybe you have the ripple effect, just like Aileen did at Nestle. Thank you again. We have just discussed this idea of engagement through the power of connection. We talked about what has worked before with the Nestle study. We've spoken about this idea of quiet quitting and how it affects engagement and productivity and the bottom line. And then we spoke about this idea of, well, how can we make sure that our connections are quality connections through the art of communication model. So it's been a pleasure being with you all here today. Thank you for your engagement. I'm going to hand over to Carly to close the webinar for you.
Thank you, Charlotte. I learned so much from that. I'm sure everyone else did as well. Can we just go to, I just wanted to share this example. So you all know that we have quite a few government clients, but Cabon Council last week or the week before reached out to us. If you could just go back one, thanks, Charlotte. They reached out to us and said, we are doing an all-employee conference next month, and we've got 150 employees coming to our town hall. And this is a local council, so they've got indoor people, corporate, they've got outdoor workers, they've got men and women, they've got a huge diverse group. And they're going to be talking about all things business. And they came to us and said, we want something at the end of our conference that is really uplifting. We want something that's really positive, and we want something that's really focused on human connection. I said, do I have the thing for you? Let me introduce you to Charlotte Jameson. So we've been talking about Project Reconnect in this scenario where we're going to be doing activities to connect people. So the info you saw from Charlotte today is delivered in an online format in a 1-hour Project Reconnect event. So if you are interested in that, I'm going to put a code up in a minute. You can let us know where you would like support. But this is just one example of a client that came to us and said, this is actually something we really want to focus on as a workplace, which is great. So our menu, you can download. I'll give you a QR code to download all of your things there. You can see Project Reconnect under the support and care pillar. We've also got emotional intelligence at work. These are two relatively new wellbeing events that we have added because there is a need. People are wanting to get smarter in this space, work out how to communicate and connect with each other. So they are now available for your workplaces. In terms of delivery models, so we do have online, we do have on-site, we do have keynote conference speaking. We've got short courses and training, but there's a bubble along the bottom. If you can just click one more, Charlotte, which is the Employee Engagement Toolkit. This is really critical for making sure the conversations continue once the event has finished. This is where we really start to see behavior change. So we like to supplement all of our events with your choice of maybe a talk track or a video or a resource, a flyer, whatever you think is going to suit your people. An example of a talk track might be 3 questions with some little points that Charlotte would put in there for your team leaders to take away from Project Reconnect. And they sit down at their toolbox talk, they sit down at their weekly whip and they say, hey, we've just been to this event on connecting with each other. And it might have 3 questions to discuss as a group. So this is where people can share, they can tell their good news stories, they can motivate and inspire each other. This is where you see the peer support, and this is where you see the real behavior change. So let me flick over to the very last slide for today. Please scan this code. Everything you need is in this one form. So if you want to download some free wellbeing tools that you can see in the green box, you can do that there. If you want to contact us to get support, to talk about Project Reconnect or any of the other wellbeing events that we offer, you can tick any of the boxes you're interested in the form as well. So whatever you need, you can get in there, just scan the code. We've got a couple of minutes remaining, so I do want to open up for Q&A. Feel free to take yourself off mute or to put your questions in the chat. We're going to hang around for a couple of minutes and take some questions now. While they are coming through, I'd love to invite you to join us for our last event of the quarter. Gosh, it has been jam-packed. We have had events every week in February and March. Next week is our last event. I am hosting Tricks of a Nutritionist for Super Busy Days. If you would like to register, you can see the code on the screen. That's a free registration. I'm going to be talking about not just nutrition for us as individuals, but also in workplaces. What can we do in workplaces to try and improve some of those healthy choices? Thank you to, oh, look at all the thank yous. Kimbra, L, Vicky, J, L and Jay, thank you for the comments, much appreciated. And to Tina, everyone's running off to their next meetings. I don't think there's any questions in there. Big thanks, Charlotte, for hosting today. It was just wonderful.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for your interaction, and yeah, happy tiny behavioring out there with your positive connections.
Love it. Thanks, Joy and Bobby Lee and Vicky. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.